right, we'll kick this off. Well, welcome everyone, and thank you so much for being here today. This has been a moment that has been a long time coming, and we are so excited that we're all finally here. And today marks the kickoff of the Women in Power Skilling Series, which is a brand new initiative that we've been building with you all in mind. And this is just not another webinar series. Think of this as a space where we'll get to like roll up our sleeves, build together. The intent here is to walk away with like real skills that you can use as part of your day-to-day jobs, whether you're going through a career transition. It doesn't matter whether you're a beginner, intermediate, or an experienced person. And we do have a bunch of series that we're lining up. We're working on structuring a content lineup for everyone here. We recently had our call for speakers out, so we've got some amazing submissions. So we're looking to see if we can provide the space for those who also want to come share all of their trials and tribulations. And as we're building momentum, we have something really special lined up. On the 19th of June, we have a panel coming up that you do not want to miss. So, mark your calendars. We will be dropping a link. We have an exciting lineup of speakers. This is going to be a panel of 4 panelists that have been long-time MVPs and some familiar faces that you see in the Microsoft ecosystem and the community. They're going to be talking about everything that it takes from skill building to having real impact, especially with how in this era of how fast technology evolves, we are going to be focusing on how you can stay relevant and what you need to be doing to be future ready in the ecosystem. But first, today's session. So I am genuinely thrilled to hand things over to someone who brings so much energy and expertise to the community. Very excited to have Delia actually leading us through today's build along, and you're in great hands. And Delia, the floor is yours.
Amazing. Thank you so much, and thank you, Women in Power Leadership Team. You are amazing. So today we are kicking off our skilling session. Hopefully you guys can see my screen. We're going to build the status tracker agent. Don't worry, I'm going to provide a little bit of context into what this agent is, the benefits, things like that. But let's just start off with some introduction. So I am Delia Zuniga. I'm a Power Platform Solution Architect at Huron Consulting Group. I reside in Southern California, Orange County. I'm part of the Women in Power Leadership Team, helping to facilitate our events area and serving as a mentor and a mentee this cohort. I also actively contribute to the community because I love this community so much through my blog and YouTube and also speaking engagements. Feel free to check out the QR code there if you would like to connect, because I'd love to connect with everyone in the community. All right, so the status tracker agent, this is what we're building today in about 55 minutes. So what this agent is, so how many times have you been on a project where you are working with other project team members and you're being asked to attend a daily stand-up where everyone goes around the room and shares the updates from the previous day or previous few days? Those meetings are, let's be honest, really boring, really dry. It feels sometimes like a waste of time because we just don't have any intention behind those team sync calls. Now, what if I told you that you can have an agent to help support and alleviate some of those administrative burdens so that your team syncs are no longer dry and boring roundtable type of calls, but rather meetings with intention, where you actually have a goal and something that you all need to address as a team to really keep the project moving. That's what the status tracker agent here does. So I'm going to show you from beginning to end how to build this agent. Hopefully you all have already opened up your workshop files. These were emailed to you if you registered as of yesterday. Those were emailed out late last night with all of the files that you're going to need to build along with me. And so here are just a couple snapshots of what the agent looks like live. We're going to be building out an adaptive card to capture the information. We're going to write that to a SharePoint list. We're going to show you how you can automate the creation of a weekly status report so it looks really nice and it doesn't look like just plain text sent via email. So as you can see, the benefits include, reducing inefficient status meetings so that you can really get the most out of the time that you are meeting with your project teams. So I'm not going to go through these because there's a lot to cover. So what I want to do next is I want to show you the build guide. So if you want to open this up along with me. So I want to show you what this build guide includes. So this is a 15-page build guide. Everyone should already have access to this. If you happen to have registered after the time that I sent this over, don't worry. As long as you registered for this event, I'll download the latest list and do a comparison to see who I might have missed in that window. So I'll make sure that everyone gets a copy of this. Feel free to share this with your team members, whomever you like. There's a nice table of contents. But we're just going to start from the very beginning. I added a section for overview if you want just a little bit more context, again, about the agent, why it is that we're building this. Some of the prerequisites, so you do need to have access to Copilot Studio. You do need access to Microsoft Teams and the ability to create a SharePoint site and to create Power Automate flows, which also come with having Copilot credits. So we're going to jump into step 3, and this was kind of some pre-work that I hope you all have had time to do, but essentially is create a SharePoint site where you can eventually create a SharePoint list. So take a quick moment to read through step 3. Essentially, it just walks you through how to create a SharePoint site so that you can eventually create a SharePoint list. So I'm going to start with step number 4. And as I'm going through the document, I'm going to do my best to let everyone know kind of what page I'm on because we're going to be moving really quickly here. So I'm on page 5 on step number 4. So create a SharePoint list. And I'm going to try my best to split my screen here. This one. All right. So here I'm in my SharePoint site, which I've already created beforehand. And we are going to create a SharePoint list. Notice I do give you the steps for how to build this out manually, but we need to move a little quicker. So I actually provided you the sample data. So we're actually going to create a SharePoint list with a Excel file. So let's go ahead and do that. Once you're in your SharePoint site, go click Home. Once that comes up, under Create, go ahead and expand that dropdown and head over to the list. A SharePoint list, for those who are unfamiliar, is very similar to an Excel table, right? We got columns, we've got rows, and we can configure the column types to fit our data. So here, what we're going to do is, how would you like to start? We can start from scratch if we'd like, but we're going to start by importing data from a file. So we're going to click on Excel and we're going to click Upload File. And I am just going to head over to where I had already downloaded the sample data from the workshop files. And once that's uploaded here, what's going to happen is we're going to see all of the columns that I have in that Excel file. And now I'm going to be able to go through it and determine what kind of column type I want to assign for each of those columns. And if you take a glance over at our build guide on the right side of my screen, I provided a table with the data type so that you can confirm that you're setting those up to the appropriate type. So now that we see our data here, you'll see some sample data that I provided you. The title, you can actually leave that as title. Under submitted by, you can keep that as a single line of text. Notice I'm just doing a comparison here. So submitted by on my left side of the screen matches the submitted by in my table for a single line of text. And then date submitted, I'm going to go ahead and actually not bring that over. Let's see, week of, looking at my table, single line of text, and we're going to keep that the way it came through. What was worked on is multiple lines of text. So I'm actually going to change this to multiple lines of text. Next, we have our status, which should be a choice column. So I'm going to change this to choice. Then we have our blockers or risks, which should be multiple lines of text. Risks and priority, we're going to select that as choice. And then moving along, impact to other teams is another choice column. Dependency or ask, multiple lines of text. And then target resolution, we are actually not going to bring this over. We're going to manually create this. And then we're going to click next. Next is going to ask us, great, what do you want to call your new list? So let's go ahead and call it the status updates. And make sure you do check the show list in site navigation. Otherwise, it might be really difficult to find. So go ahead and click that create button. So what's happening now is our Excel is being taken and being brought in as a SharePoint list. You're going to see all of the columns that we just defined with all of the sample text from the Excel file. So here we have our SharePoint list. We see the title, we have our columns, but notice that some of them we had defined as choice columns. So this is where we're actually going to go in there and provide some of the other values. So choice columns, think, drop down options for a column value. And so that's what we're going to do next. So here, let's bring this over a bit. So now we are on step number 5, show the built-in created column. So we're going to do that. So here is our SharePoint list. Let's go ahead and click add column. We're going to click show or hide columns, and we're actually going to bring in the created column here. What that's going to do is that we're going to be able to see a column that tells us the day in which that particular item or row was created. This is going to be helpful because we're going to use that as our date submitted input whenever it is that we need to run for the weekly status report. So we have that. Next step is we want to add a column, then create the week of column. So this is going to be a single line of text titled week of. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to add another column. We're going to keep it as text and click next. And then we're going to type in week of. We're going to keep it as single line of text and save. Oh, I already have it. Okay, never mind. It's already in there. Perfect. And then lastly, we need to add our values to our choice column. So here we have a better way to split my screens here. Okay. So we noticed we had some choice columns. The first one was the status. So if we go over to the status and select that drop down, head over to column settings and edit. This is where we can actually add the different choices that we want for this particular column. We're talking about statuses, so we might want to include on track, at risk, blocked, completed. So let's go ahead and do that. In this middle section is where we can add our choices. So the first one I'm going to add is the on track. And then I'm going to add all of the other ones. So at risk, I'm going to say blocked and completed. What you can also do here is add some color. So whenever it shows up as on track, maybe you want this to appear as green because that's a good thing. If it's at risk, maybe that's yellow. Blocked, we're going to make that red. And then completed, maybe we'll do like a purple or something. We're going to go ahead and save that. And then notice what that does to our SharePoint list. It adds all of the colors from that we just designated, right? So let's move on to the next choice column. We're looking at our admin build guide. The next one is the blocker or risk priority, which is actually the second one where you see the high, low, medium values. We're going to do the exact same thing. So we're going to expand the menu, head over to column settings and edit. We're going to add some choices here. And I'm going to add a low, medium, and a high. All right. We can also incorporate some colors again. I'm just going to stick to the standard green, yellow, red, and click save. All right, moving down our choice columns. Next one was the impact to other teams. Same thing, expand menu, column settings, and edit. And here we are going to do a low, medium, high, and then a none option. So medium, if I can spell it right, and high, and a none option. So I'm going to make this one green, make that one yellow, red, and purple. And I'm going to save that. Okay, I think those were all our choice columns. I'm going to expand this. So if you open in immersive mode, it's actually going to open it in Microsoft Lists. It's the same thing. It might look a little bit different, but it's all the same data with everything that we just configured together. So what we've done so far is we've created a SharePoint site and created our SharePoint list and uploaded our sample data, which is what we see here. So moving down the build guide, we're now on number 5, creating the agent in Copilot Studio. We're going to be bouncing around a few different places. So I'll do my best to call out where we are in the build guide. So first we're going to go to Microsoft Copilot Studio. I already have it open, but in case you don't know how to get there, it's simply copilotstudio.microsoft.com. Once you head over and sign in, this is what Copilot Studio looks like. Copilot Studio is Microsoft's low-code, no-code platform for building agents. This is a great place to build agents that are conversational, autonomous, what have you. And today this is where we're gonna build the status updates tracker agent. And so once we're here, we're gonna create a brand new agent. Within this middle section here, we have agents. We're gonna click on that. And now we are going to name our agent. So go ahead and type in status tracker agent and click create. Typically, you would want to create your agent in the solution, but for right now, we just want to focus on how to actually build the agent itself. So once it's setting everything up for us, it's making sure that we have everything available. So while we're waiting for that, let me just kind of orient us into what it is that we're looking at. So this is the interface in which we're going to be able to configure our Copilot Studio agent. You'll notice on the right side of the screen, we have a test panel. So this is where you can test your agent as you're giving it more power, whether you're adding additional knowledge or have configured a tool or anything like that. You can be testing your agent to make sure that it's behaving the way that you're expecting it to behave. But at the very beginning, I typically just like to close out the test panel so that I can get the full space of Copilot Studio. And then once I'm ready, I can pop it back out. So what it's doing right now is in the back end, it's going to start populating some of the areas here. You'll notice, it did bring over the name of my agent. This is a quick tour, but I'm going to be your tour guide for today. There's going to be a place to add your description. The model might be defaulting to Claude Sonnet. Depending on your tenant and such, it might default to a different model. And then there's going to be an instruction section. So, okay, at the very top, we see that green banner letting us know that our agent has been provisioned, which is essentially just telling us you're good to go, you're ready to get building. So what we're going to do first is let's take a look at our build guide. So we created a new agent. We've named our agent. We're going to set the model to the default, which really just means just don't touch whatever model was already selected. That's totally fine for this. And then the next thing is we're going to disable web search. So if you scroll down, we're in our overview tab here at the top in case you may have navigated away. If you scroll down within your overview tab over to your knowledge section, at the very bottom here, you'll see web search is automatically enabled. For this particular agent, we're actually going to disable that. And the reason for that is because this agent should really only be grounded in the updates that are provided by our project teams, right? So there might be some instances in which, our agent is trying to give us the information that we're asking for. And if we would have enabled the web search, it may have gone out to the web to try to answer your questions, and it may not align with, the status of the project. So what I typically like to do, depending on your use case, you may not actually need to enable web search. So for this particular use case, we're going to disable it. All right, so now we are on number 6. So this is where we're actually going to create our flow, our Power Automate flow or agent flows or workflows. I think the name is workflows nowadays. So let's go ahead and do that. So within our Copilot Studio agent, we can actually stay within the overview tab. So you'll actually notice within our overview section, we do have instructions, we have knowledge, we also have a dedicated knowledge tab at the top. Similarly, we have a tool section down here, but we also have a dedicated tools tab at the top. So you can go to either places. It's going to get you to the same place. The overview is just an easier way to kind of quickly get an at-a-glance view of what you've configured so far in your agent. So here I'm going to scroll down over to our tools, and I'm going to go and add a tool. Once this pop-up appears, whoa, okay. Under create new, I'm going to go ahead and click on create an agent flow. What's going to happen here is the designer is going to appear where it's going to automatically give me the first and the last step of the flow. Because this is created within the context of an agent, the trigger is automatically set to when an agent calls the flow. So essentially what that means is this flow is going to be a tool that the agent can call whenever it deems necessary. So there might be information that the agent needs to send through to this flow, and that is what we can capture in this trigger here. So I've actually already created this one. I don't want to have duplicates, so let me just open up the other one that I've already created. But what you're going to be doing is you're going to stay in that same window that I was just showing you, and this is what you're going to build out. So looking at our build guide, we're going to set up our trigger. So here we have the first and that third step are what you should all have already available in your flow. The only thing is we're going to be adding a middle step here of creating an item. So if we take a look at our build guide, we're going to set up our trigger first, and these are all of the trigger inputs. So what's going to happen, what the workflow looks like is our end users, our project team members are going to ask to submit an update to the agent. The agent is going to give the end user a form, that adaptive card, where the user can then input their status updates and submit that. The information that is collected in that adaptive card is stored in separate variables. So we want to pass those variables to this flow so that the flow can write all of that data to our SharePoint list, which again is that very first thing that we wrote here. So these are all entries that were submitted by our project team. So we need a way to bridge that gap from the agent over to our SharePoint list. And that's what we're creating here in this agent flow or workflow. So let's open up our trigger action. Yours might be will be all empty. And at the very bottom, go ahead and click add an input and then select text. You're going to do this about 8 times. And for each of them, I just want you to define the name of the input. You don't worry about that second field. You can just leave that as is. So if you look at your build guide, you essentially can just copy this name and bring it over to that first field and paste it right in. So go ahead and do that. So you're going to do that for submitted by, submitted name, let's see, I think mine got switched over. So you're going to do that for each of the trigger inputs that we have in the build guide, what was worked on, status, blockers, dependency, so on and so forth. I'll give you just a moment there, and I'll pause actually real quickly to see if there are any really quick questions. Or just a thumbs up if you guys are following along. Okay. All right, so moving along, here we've set up the trigger inputs for our flow. now we're going to create the item action. So to do that, in this middle space, you're going to add that plus icon. You're going to type in create item and select the action that appears under the group of SharePoint actions here. Whoa, my mouse is a little crazy. Okay, let's try that again. Create item, go ahead and click on that. And now what you're going to want to do is fill in these fields. So one, you want to define the site address. So again, which SharePoint site does your SharePoint list live in? In my case, it was DZ Demos SharePoint site. And then what's going to happen once you do that is you're going to see a list of all of the SharePoint lists that live within that site. So you can expand that menu and then select the one that we just created together. If you don't see it in there, you can manually type it out. Similarly, if you don't see the site address, just grab the URL for the site address. So up until sites / and then the name of your site, you can just copy and paste that into the site address. And then give it a few seconds so that it can actually go and retrieve that information, and then select your list name from the menu provided. Once you kind of click outside of those fields, what's going to happen is your advanced parameters are going to increase. So it's probably going to go from 1 of 1 to 1 of 12 or 1 of 10, or whatever, however many columns you have. And so what we're going to see here are all of the fields that we have in our SharePoint list. So these are the columns in the SharePoint list that now we need to map to the values that we collected from our project team members. So now what we're going to do is we're just going to play a game of matching. So within the title, we're going to select on the field. We're going to click on the lightning bolt, which is our dynamic content that we have available. And then what we're going to do is we're going to scroll towards the bottom, the second group of content we have available here under the when an agent calls the flow. And now for the title, if we recall back to our SharePoint list, our title was our sub-team name. So essentially the name of the team that the individual is on. So we're going to select the sub-team name and bring that into that field. The next one, let's skip for the week of for right now. But for submitted by, we're going to do the exact same thing. We're going to click on that dynamic content. We're going to select submitted by and continue on the next one. What was worked on, lightning bolt, clicked on what was worked on. If you don't see your option here, it's probably because you need to expand that. So when you click on that see more, you're going to be able to expand all of the other options available. So you go ahead and do that, map the rest of the fields. If you don't see this, go ahead and expand the advanced parameters and click all of the column names, or what I like to do is click show all and then exit or remove the ones that I don't need, which is usually the very first one and then that very last field, and I can keep everything else. All right. So taking a look at our build guide, we are now on page 7, and we are going to configure the week of expression. So I've already provided you the expression to use. So if you go ahead and copy that text under your week of, remember week of was not an input that we defined in our trigger. So it's actually something we need to write out. And so when you click on the field, instead of selecting that lightning bolt, go ahead and click FX. This essentially is a place where you can define expressions or like formulas that needs to happen for that particular field. So this, I'm just going to click on the one that I already have here. And what I did is I just pasted the expression that I provided to you in the build guide. And once you do that, go ahead and click, yours might say add if it's the first time, or it might say update. And then once you bring that over, it's going to appear as a nice pink purplish box here. All right. So next, what we're going to do is we're going to save and publish the flow. So usually what I like to do is I like to save this. So save the draft first. It might take a little bit, especially if it's the first time. So just give it a few seconds while it goes and saves it. But you may have also noticed that your flow probably says untitled, right? So in order to change the title, just click on the title itself, and then you can go ahead and change the name to the submit new update. And then once you do that, go ahead and click Save Draft again and click Publish. It's really important that you click Publish because if clicking Publish essentially makes it available for the agent to use later down the road, once we're ready to bring in this flow into our topic. You may not see it if you didn't publish it. So that's typically a pitfall that some people will fall into, is that they forget to click Publish. So, all right, so we've done that, we've saved it, we've published our flow. So now let's go back into our agent and we're going to create a new topic. So for this one, I am going to try my best to keep the build guide over on the left side of my screen because there are quite a few details there that's going to be helpful to see side by side. So we're going to jump back into our agent on the left side. If you hover over agents, sometimes it brings up the list. Otherwise, go ahead and just click on agents and then open up the agent that we just created, which should be something like the status tracker update or whatever name it was that you gave your agent. So now we're in the agent space. I'm going to click on the agent I just created. I'm going to close out my test panel here because I don't need it. And now at the very top, you'll notice that my the tabs here got truncated just because of the space. But what we're going to do is we're going to go over to topics. And notice I don't see it here, so I'm actually going to click that +6 and go over to topics. Here I'm just following the build guide. So next I'm going to add a new topic. So add topic. I'm going to select from blank so that I have full control over the way that it's built. And now I'm going to type in the name. So at the top left, click Untitled and name our topic the Submit New Update. So essentially, when the end user is asking to submit a new update, this particular topic or flow of conversation is going to be triggered. So now we need to define the steps and the order in which we need the agent to go through this particular branch. So here within our topic, we need to describe when the agent should be triggering this particular topic. The topic name is not sufficient enough. So if you look at our build guide, just go ahead and copy what I provided. And so for the description, we're just going to say when the user wants to submit a new update. So we're going to click in this open space, and I like to save before I make any additional changes. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to create that adaptive card. So remember, the adaptive card was that form that appears to the end user, which is a nice place to ask the end user to provide, for information. And we might want to split it out in different ways. So adaptive cards are a great way for capturing data as opposed to going back and forth multiple times with your agent. So the next piece, number 4 here, I'm going to add the Ask with Adaptive card. I'm going to click on that plus icon, Ask with Adaptive card. And then I'm going to click on this space here so that this side panel appears. Under format, you see the JSON card, and then we have the edit adaptive card. Go ahead and click on that. At this time, I also need you to open up one of the workshop files titled Adaptive Card JSON. So it should look a little bit like this, right? We have the adaptive card. We're going to go ahead and copy all of this. Copy. And down in the card payload editor, I'm going to select all of that and simply replace it with what I provided you. Notice what happens. The adaptive card completely built itself, right? Because that's what all of this code is telling it. So it's already defined all of the different fields. We have a title, we have the sub-team name, what was worked on, status, blockers or risks. Remember, all of these fields are mapping to the columns that we've already defined in our SharePoint list. So you can go in here and make certain fields required. Notice some of them do have the red asterisk, whereas some of them do not. So if you want to expand the element properties for any of these fields, towards the bottom, you have a validation section, which is where you can set a particular field to be required. If any of the existing fields are set to required but doesn't need to be, you can go ahead and actually remove that. So once we've done that, we're going to click on save, and then we're going to close this out. And now you'll see that we actually have our adaptive card here. So I'm going to exit the side panel just so I have more space. And now I'm going to continue through the steps here. So we've added a tool. No, we have not. We've added the adaptive card. We've pasted in the JSON found in the workshop files. Now we want to add a tool. So what's happening here is the end user says, I want to submit a new update. The agent says, great, I need to follow these steps. So the agent is going to send the end user the submit status update. Before I go any further, I'm going to click that save button. And what we can actually do if you want is we can start testing this. So let's start a new session so it's nice and refreshed. And in the prompt here, I'm just going to click submit or type in submit new update. And the expectation is that we get that adaptive card. So this is more or less the experience that our end users are going to get when they type in submit new update, which is exactly what comes up. And then on the left side, we can confirm that that adaptive card did get pulled in from the submit new update topic that we just created. All right, that's perfect. Let's move on. So now that we've captured all of that information from our project team members, now we need to send that over to our flow that we built, because remember, our flow is what adds all of that data into our SharePoint list. So at the very bottom, let's scroll down. You'll notice that every field comes with a variable. So the field itself has a variable, which is the purple box. And any information that is captured in that field is the value, right? So that value is being stored in each of these variables. So now each of these elements here contain information that the user provided us. So now when we go to our next piece, we're going to be able to hand those pieces of information over to our flow. So let's go ahead and click that plus icon one more time. We're going to add a tool. If you hover over it, you should see your submit new update tool. If you don't see it there, check the tool tab there. If you still don't see it, it may be because you haven't published your flow. So go ahead and click submit new update. And now what's happening is I see all of the trigger inputs that I defined in that flow that we built. Remember, we created, there were 8, I believe, trigger inputs. Those are now reflected here. So now what Copilot Studio is asking me is saying, great, you want me to use this tool. This flow requires trigger inputs. What values do you want me to pass to this flow? So this is where, again, we're going to be matching what we collected from the user through the adaptive card to the input that it aligns to through the flow. So if you look at our build guide, I provided a table on the last column here, the notes expressions for flow. You'll notice some of them are a little bit different and not direct mapping. So let's just kind of go through the list here. So sub-team name, I'm going to click the 3 dot for select a variable. And now I'm going to stay within the custom tab here, and I'm going to click scroll down to the bottom until I see sub-team name. I tried my best to make sure that the names were the same, so it makes mapping a lot easier. Okay, there we go. Submitted by. Notice we don't have a submitted by variable here, and that's okay because Studio is already capturing of information about the user that we can pull into anywhere we need in our conversation here. But those pieces of information live within the system section of the variable. So here we're going to type in first for the user first name. Actually, I don't want the first name. I want the display name, which gives me their full name, first, last name. So we're going to bring that over here. And then the next was what was worked on. So I'm going to click on that variable, scroll to the bottom because the list is alphabetical. And then I'm going to bring that in. And then next one is the status. I'm going to bring the status in within the custom category. And then we have our blockers. But blockers, if you take a look at our table here, this one actually has an expression tied to it. We can bring in the blockers variable just as we have all the other ones, but the blockers was an optional field. And so there might be an instance in which the user doesn't fill out that field. And sometimes if it's a blank field, you might get errors and things like that. So what I typically like to do is to add a space at the end so it doesn't come up as an empty field. So within your blockers section, go ahead and just copy the line that starts with topic and ends with a quote. So we're going to go into our blockers. We're going to expand the variables, but instead we're going to hop over to our formula tab and then paste in the expression and then click enter or insert. And then the next one is blockers priority. So I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm just going to copy what's in the table, variables, formula, paste that in, click insert, impact on teams, and I'm just going to keep doing this for the remaining fields here. Dependency or ask, select variable, formula, paste, insert. Last one, target resolution date. We're going to do formula. We're going to paste that in and insert. Okay. So now that we've done that, let's go ahead and save so that we don't lose all of the work we've already done. The next thing that we're going to do is let's see. So we've added a tool. We've mapped the fields, and now we want to add a message. So once the update has been posted to the SharePoint list, we want to let our project team members know. So I'm going to go ahead and click that plus icon. I'm going to click on send a message. And the message that I want to send to the user is your status update has been submitted. Thank you. So I'm going to go ahead and paste that in. And then what I like to do is also add a end all topics or end current topic node here, only because from experience, sometimes it can get stuck in a topic if the user is trying to navigate away from it. So what this does, it just kind of closes this loop so that the end user has the freedom to do something else. All right, so those are all of these steps here. I'm going to click save. So as a quick recap here, we've defined the trigger. So essentially when the end user asks to submit a new update, they're going to get this adaptive card. They're going to fill it in. They're going to click that submit update, and then the agent is going to send all of those pieces of information through our flow that we defined, and that flow is going to write the data to our SharePoint list. Once that's done, the agent is going to come back and send this message to the end user. And that kind of wraps up that particular workflow. But we want to give our agent some more capabilities. So we want the ability to be able to ask our agent anything about what may have been submitted to that SharePoint list. So essentially, I want the ability to say, what was the last update submitted by the accounting team or the engineering team, and it will go and read through the SharePoint list, look at the most recent updates from that particular team, because remember we're collecting what team the individuals are on. And it'll be able to give me a summary of everything that has been submitted recently. So in order to do that, we need to give the agent the ability to read through that SharePoint list. So to do that, we're going to go up to the very top. I'm going to click that +7 to expand the tabs at the very top. I'm going to head over to tools. So now I'm on page 9 on step 8, specifically 8.1. And now I'm going to click on add a tool. So we're going to see that same pop-up that we saw earlier, but this time we are going to type in get items. And it's important that you make sure that you type in items, plural, instead of singular. And then we're going to select get items. And then we're going to click on add and configure. If it doesn't automatically connect, it might require you to do so. And then you're going to want to click add and configure. And then next, what we're going to do is we're going to define the particular site address and the SharePoint list that we want the agent to look at whenever it is we're asking to collect that information or to review that information. So here we have our name and description are pretty generic, but it's really important that we are very intentional about the name and the description of our tools, because that's what helps guide the agent to discern when to use this particular tool. So looking at our build guide, we are going to just rename this to Get Status Updates. And then I'm going to replace that with Get Status Updates from a SharePoint list. The credentials, we're going to keep it as the end user credentials because we want to make sure and authenticate each user who is submitting updates and who's wanting to review updates that they have access to the SharePoint list, because they should have access to the SharePoint list. So we don't want anyone who doesn't need access to it to have access to it. So keep that as end user credentials. It's the default. And then we're going to scroll down to the input section. And this is where, similar to what we did for our flow, we're going to select the site address. It should appear on the menu, but if not, again, just copy and paste that URL. For the list name, under fill using, expand that menu and click custom value. You want to give it a few seconds so it gives it time to populate the list. If you don't see it right away, don't worry, just kind of click away and then try again. It might take a couple of shots, but then it should pull in the name. So here I'm going to bring in the status updates, which was the name of the SharePoint list that I had created. And so now we have given our tool a name, a description, added our inputs, and now I'm going to go ahead and click save. Next up is we're going to add another tool. We're going to give our agent the ability to send an email. So there might be instances in which you ask the agent to run the weekly status report, and then you might want to ask the agent to email it to yourself. And so we need to give the agent the ability to actually send out emails on your behalf. So here I'm still within our tool section. I'm going to go ahead and click add a tool once again. This time I'm going to type in send an email. I want to make sure that I'm using the Outlook connector, the Office 365 Outlook connector. So I'm going to click on that first one, send an email V2. Similar to before, it's going to make sure that it's connected to your tenant. Click add and configure. And then we're going to do a lot of the same things that we did before. We're going to rename this tool. I'm going to start copying this, the send weekly status via email. I'm going to change the name to send weekly status via email. I'm also going to put that in the description. I'm going to keep the credentials as end user credentials. If I scroll down to the inputs for the to subject and body, it says to leave it as dynamically fill with AI. Except for the body section, I want to customize this. So what this allows you to do is, even though I'm telling the agent that I want you to fill out the body of the email, I want to guide you so that you know more or less what I'm expecting in that particular field. So here I have the body, the display name, and here I can input a description. So here I'm going to just copy this from the build guide, and I'm going to replace it in the description. And essentially it's just saying use HTML output from the prompt. So you might be wondering, well, wait, what prompt? That's what we're going to configure next. So let's go ahead and save this. Scrolling through the build guide, we're on page 10, number 8.3. I'm going to go ahead and copy the prompt here. I'm going to go back to tools, add a new tool, click on prompt. I'm going to name this create weekly status report prompt. Actually, I've already created this, so let me just click on the one that I've already created. Add and configure. And then once that pop-up appears on the left side, go ahead and paste the prompt in there. And then near the top, you're going to see a blue test button. If you want, go ahead and test that out, change the name of it, and then click save. Once you've done that, it's going to look a little bit like this. So essentially what we're asking, what the purpose of this prompt is to read through all of the items or all the updates submitted through the SharePoint list. Give me a summary of everything that was submitted by the different sub teams for the last 7 days. I provide some guidance on how it is that I want the output to look like. And then I also provide guidance that I need this in HTML so that I can easily send it via email. And so once we have all of that defined, there's nothing else here. So I'm going to go ahead and click that save button. If it was grayed out, you can just go to either the name or the description, add a space, and then that save button will appear as blue. So you can go ahead and save it. And then we're going to scroll down. Now we are going to set the agent instructions. I personally like to give my agents all of the tools and knowledge first, and then I go and write out my instructions. Some people like to write instructions first and then add all the tools. It's really up to you. But next, what we're going to do is add our agent instructions. So at the moment, our agent just has all of these tools, but we need to provide our agent some guidance and a purpose for what it is that it was created for. And so that's what our agent instructions provided. So here I'm going to copy all the text in this gray box. I'm going to head over to the overview tab. I'm going to scroll down to the instructions section, click that edit button, and paste that in. Sometimes it may not come through as nicely. Sometimes what I like to do is paste it in like a notepad and then copy it again. And sometimes the formatting comes through. Yeah, there we go. So it looks a little bit nicer. Otherwise, you can sit there and just add all of your spacing and such. So here, the next thing what we're going to do is we are going to we're in this yellow box here. So we're going to reference the tools that we built directly in our instructions. So what I mean by that is in our instructions, you'll notice that there are some words that are in brackets. For example, the insert the submit new update topic. So what that's telling me is in this space, instead of putting that, I want to reference the submit new update topic. So I'm going to delete that. And in this space right after the colon, I'm going to click my /, which is a shortcut to expand the menu of all the tools and actions, tools and topics that we've defined so far for our agent. And I can bring that directly into my instructions. So here I'm going to call the submit new update topic. You'll notice at the very bottom it says topic, another says tools, so on and so forth. We're going to click on that. And we're going to do that for all of the places where we see the brackets. So for this one where you want to bring in the get status updates tool. So we're going to / get status updates. I think there's maybe like 2 more. We're going to / get status updates. And then for this one, we want to call the prompt. For this one, it's the one with the blue sparkle, the create weekly status report prompt. And then there's one more. There it is for the email. So essentially what I'm telling our agent to do here is that when the user is asking for a weekly status report, it knows exactly what it needs to do, and it's going to automatically send it via email. And the last few lines are about tone. So we're going to go ahead and save that. We can add some suggested prompts. So if you are within the overview tab, scroll to the very bottom. There's a suggested prompt section, which I think is really important because it really helps your end users understand your agent's capabilities. So within the build guide, I have 5 or so different suggested prompts. They're really easy to add. Just click that add button and you can just copy and paste these suggested prompts as you see there. You can do that for all of the others and then go ahead and click save. But in the interest of time, I'm just going to skip through to the next piece. Now, what I typically like to do is I like to configure my greeting message or the conversation start message. Because at the moment, whenever someone starts a brand new conversation where it triggers the conversation start topic, they get this message. And I want to be able to customize that. I want to be able to add a little bit more information. So I'm going to go ahead and click that +7 and head over to topics. I'm just going to copy all of this. I'm going to the greeting. And under this message, I'm just going to go ahead and delete it. And I'm just going to add a brand new send a message. And I'm going to paste in what I provided in the build guide. I don't think I grabbed everything. So let's try that again. Yeah. So hi, and then it says, hi, I'm your project status update. I can help you essentially with the following. You might need to play around a little bit with the formatting. And then if you get that error message, that's okay. You can just remove the expression and then add that variable again. But essentially what we're doing is we're just bringing in the user's first name so that it doesn't just say, hi, I'm the project status tracker agent, but instead it says, hi, Delia. So it makes it more personal for our end users. Now I'm going to go ahead and click save. And then I'm also going to, if I head over to the name of this topic and expand that menu, here I can go to all of the other topics. If you don't see a particular one, you can always go up to the topics, go to your system topics, and let's head over to the conversation start. And then here, what I like to do is actually like to delete this one entirely, add a node and redirect it to my greeting topic so that everyone gets the same welcome message. All right, so now if I go to our test panel and refresh it, here I have that custom welcome message. I know we are in the last minute here. The next steps to the build guide are pretty straightforward. I provided you the agent icon, so you go ahead and add the icon. I provided the steps for how to deploy the agent to Microsoft Teams, so go ahead and do that. And the next steps are really just open it up in Teams, start testing it and making sure that all of the connections work. If not, you just have to jump back into Copilot Studio, make a few tweaks. But if you need any additional assistance, feel free to reach out.